Hello and welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast. I am your host, Michael Sherlock. Each one of us holds great potential, and tapping into that potential is my passion and my mission. Shock Your Potential is a global leadership training company dedicated to creating positive, productive, and profitable workplaces. We develop, nurture, train, and guide leaders at all levels and at all points in their career. Through this podcast, I get to interview amazing leaders who are shocking their own potential and the potential of those around them. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com and shockyourpotentialpodcast.com. And don't forget to check out my two best-selling books, Tell Me More, How to Ask the Right Questions and Get the Most Out of Your Employees, and Sales Mixology, Why the Most Potent Sales and Customer Experiences Follow a Recipe for Success. Join us now as we meet another great guest. And don't forget, subscribe, rate, and like us today. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Shock Your Potential. And today we are going to talk about something that not many people think about, and that is the power of the written word. And no, I'm not talking about in books. I'm talking about how we communicate with business transactions in a way that's much more personal. And if you're like me, you hate it when you have 10,000 emails in your inbox, but you really love it when you get an important piece of mail. So joining me today is David Wachs, and he is with a company called Handywritten. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but he's also a contributor for Inc. magazine. He has a really vast tech background that I can't even understand. I know we all know I have an app, but that doesn't mean that I know anything about the darn app. I just know what to put on the app. So thank you, David, for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. This is really awesome, and I'm honored to be on.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, and we'll dive really into Handwritten. But, give us a little background. You have a really intriguing background.
Well, thank you. It's been a long road, but basically, I'll kind of fill you in on my life before Handwritten because it explains why I started Handwritten. Prior to Handwritten, back in 2005, I started a text messaging company. This was before the iPhone and the Android and all that stuff. And texting was just starting to get really popular. And I spent 7 years doing that company. And another 2 years after that working for the new owners of the company. But with that, I realized, yeah, text messaging works. I mean, when we sent out a text for the local smoothie place, people would be lined up around the block to receive smoothies. But what I also realized is I had taken part in creating a monster. Not just me. Obviously, I was a very, very small part of that. But we were sending millions of text messages a day on behalf of Abercrombie & Fitch and Toys R Us and Sam's Club and OfficeMax and these big brands. And people are getting hundreds of text messages a day or 100 text messages a day. They're getting over 150 emails a day for work.
Yeah.
I think it's taking up something like 25% of the typical office worker's time just managing email. So when I left Sell It, the texting company, I thought there has to be a better way to get in front of everybody because right now it's all just noise. And that's where Handwritten came from. When I sold the last company, I sent out handwritten notes, or I tried to send out handwritten notes to my employees and my best clients. And I realized after 5 or 6 notes, my hands got tired. I lost interest in writing them.
Sometimes you ran out of ink.
You run out of ink. Your handwriting starts suffering. You make mistakes. It takes you 4 times as long to get the notes out, postage and all the rest. I was just like, man, I really want to send these notes, but I'm too lazy to do it. So what could I do to fix this problem? And that's where Handwritten came out of. So back when I started Handwritten, which was like the day after I left the last company, we were very small and we had 2 off-the-shelf handwriting machines you could buy from a company in Virginia. They were used by government officials and that type of thing. A couple years of using those, and I realized we needed something better. And so talk about shock your potential. I have no background in building a robot, but we set out on this journey. It took us about 3 years to come out with our first handwriting robot, and that's what we do. So now we've
Wow.
got, this business is literally 10 times more complicated than my last, and that business was pretty complicated. But we have an iPhone app like you and an Android app, a website, Salesforce.com integration, Zapier integration, which if you don't know what Zapier is, I'm happy to talk about that. It's super cool. An API for your geeky listeners that know what an API is. We have all these ways of collecting handwritten notes, the information for handwritten notes. And then what we do is we use these robots. We currently have 95 that we've built. And prior to COVID, we were building about 1 to 2 a week, but we've put that on pause. And we build these robots in-house. So we use laser cutters and crazy high-end 3D printers. And we literally assemble these robots in-house like it's the Ford factory in the 40s or
Wow.
whatever. And then we put these robots to work for us. We don't sell them. We don't lease them. They're strictly put on our factory floor to fill orders because the robots are not the fastest thing in the world. They're only about as fast as a human, but they don't stop for coffee and their hand doesn't cramp and they don't get bored,
And they
etc.
don't get
So
sick.
they don't get
Yeah,
sick.
sometimes
That's right.
sometimes they get sick in a different way when they break down, but
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what we're doing is we're prior to COVID, we were doing about 120,000 notes a month.
wow.
And this is for everybody from nonprofits to realtors, mortgage brokers, car dealers, high-end luxury brands like you go to the mall and buy a super expensive leather purse, we would send you a handwritten note follow-up from that. We don't mention a lot of clients because nobody wants to be known as sending phony handwritten notes, but there's a few I can mention. But that's really what it is it was, I saw a need for my own service, so we created it. And in addition to the handwritten notes, we allow you to include your business card if that's important, or
Oh.
a gift card to Starbucks, Starbucks, Target, Visa, Amazon. We have a whole bunch of gift cards you can add, and it's really just putting that note in the mail for you to take that off your plate.
Wow. So, as you were talking, I was thinking about a friend of mine who sent me something a while back, and I know it was a handwritten card, but I knew it wasn't him, and it came with a Starbucks card. So now I think I understand
It could
how
have
this
been.
happened.
It could have been us. It could have been us. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of it. We're here in Phoenix. It's a very, anybody that ever wants, after COVID ends, anybody that wants to come and see it in action, it's pretty interesting to see how we build the robots and write the orders and all that. We give tours all the time. But it has been a shock your potential experience of trying to figure out how to build these robots and manage them and keep track of ink and all that stuff.
Oh my goodness. Well, and first I was laughing because when you said, and the next day after I, walked away from the first company, I'm like, you took a long break.
It was, honestly, I regret it. Now the company started very slowly. At about the same time, this is getting too personal, but about the same time I walked away from the first company, I met my soon-to-be wife online. She was in Canada, I was in Chicago. We were going back and forth and that type of thing. But I started Handwritten at the same time. And initially when I started it, I outsourced most of the fulfillment to a print shop in Chicago. I gave them those handwriting machines that didn't work so well and had them struggle with it as I went on my honeymoon and all that stuff. But then I came back and things really picked up and we started putting our big boy pants on and being a real company. And that's when things started picking up.
Now, David, the only question I have is, did you send your soon-to-be wife handwritten notes?
No, but our friends use the service to send us thank you notes for whatever, wedding gifts and that type of thing. And when she gets them, she's always like, wow, this person has beautiful handwriting. And I'm just like, come on. I mean, don't you recognize it? My wife loves the service we have 2 young kids and she uses it to send thank you notes after birthday parties and that type of stuff.
Yep.
And it really does. People ask us all the time, who are your clients? And I'm like, anybody that wants to send a handwritten note, which is pretty much anybody. So it goes all the way from the individual to the large insurance company, that type of thing.
That's fantastic. I have terrible handwriting. And I actually started my career as an elementary school teacher. And I
Hmm.
remember in those days, before we finished our, undergrad, whatever, we were writing stuff on the chalkboard because it was still a
Hmm.
chalkboard at that time. I'm that old. And I remember I had a professor who was so disgusted by my handwriting that she made me stop writing on the board one day in class. And she said, "You will never, ever, ever be hired as a teacher ever. You can't even write a lowercase f in cursive." And I was like, wow, that's pretty, I don't, I mean, I know it's not great, but I don't think I'm not going to get a job. And I did get a job, by the way. So I showed her.
You know what's scary is we have one client. I guess she's very affluent. She has two or three young kids, and she is paid. And now most handwriting that we do is we've got on our website about 18 different handwriting styles that you can choose from,
Oh,
and those have been kind of perfected. They're messy, they're fancy, they're block, they're script, etc. But or you could opt to create your own handwriting, and this affluent woman is having the handwriting of her children replicated, which
oh
I think
no.
is ridiculous. I'm happy to take her money. And then what she's going to do is she's going to have us redo it in a few years when they get older and their handwriting gets better. So
Okay.
she's in it for a pretty penny, because having our handwriting designers do this, when we generate a handwriting style for somebody, it's not just we recreate every letter in the alphabet in uppercase and lowercase. We have to do multiple versions of each letter, and then we have
Mm.
to do what are called ligature combinations. So two F's together, two T's together, an S at the end of the word, two O's together, all that type of stuff, because people connect those letters differently. Like, do you connect your two T's with one crossbar, that type of thing. So we take
Ah,
all that info and we design this handwritten font. It's not a font, but similar to a font that then our robots write out. And it's pretty laborious getting it done. So, and we charge $1,000 to create your own. It's a one-time fee, and then it's
mm.
available on the site. You don't, totally optional. Very few, I mean, we have about 60 people that have done that. But this woman is having like all three of her kids do it multiple times, and we're just rolling our
Ah,
eyes. But I hope she's not listening. But yeah, good for her if
pass
she
it on
wants
to
to spend
her.
that money. Yeah.
Well, when you're talking, I was thinking about how you're right. I mean, if you want people to be able to read it and not recognize that it's done by a computer, you wouldn't want the S in the middle of a word to look the same way you'd make the S at an end of a word with a different kind of flourish or any letter like
Yep.
that. So I can see that. That's a lot of thought process to go in. You're pretty
Yeah, and
committed
then
to this
there's
business
also without getting in too deep, we people say, well, a couple things. They say, can you tell it's written by a robot? The short answer is, if I hand you a note and I say, hey, what do you think of this note? You'll say, wow, what a nice note. Thank you for sending me that note. If I say, here's a note, was it written by a robot? Then your level of scrutiny goes way, way up. And
now.
in
Right.
that case, you might guess it's written by a robot, but we do vary character by character the entire note. The other thing we do is we don't bend the words so they don't like all of a sudden trail down the side of the page. But what we do is we vary the line spacing every line so that one line is a little bit higher than the next line. And then we call that the inner line jitter. And then we also jitter the left margin. So not every character on the left end starts in the same spot. So you don't have a very straight line down the left. It's a very subtle in out to kind of better recreate how a human writes. And then sometimes, quite frankly, the paper is grabbed at a very slight angle by the robots as it pulls into the paper feed. So the writing is at an angle, and we say, oh, well, that's naturally, a lot of people write at an angle. But we don't have it bend and curve up and down. It's maybe at a slight angle, maybe not. But yeah, we do our best to replicate human handwriting as close as possible.
That is, I mean, the just the thought process behind all those details is phenomenal. I mean, I would have never thought through all those things, but I mean, I can see as you continue to work this, making sure that it looks more human by perfecting the robot process is what a great merger.
It's very interesting, complicated but interesting.
So given all that you've done, because I mean, this is a really incredible career you've had. What's the most important professional lesson that you have learned that has helped to shock your potential?
So when I was in college in Philadelphia, I had this is 20 some odd years ago, but I had the pleasure of being in the organization that brought speakers to campus. And we brought Dr. Ruth, we brought Madeleine Albright and Hillary Clinton and others. But
Dr.
we
Ruth,
brought,
Madeline Albright.
yeah, yeah, crazy.
Go.
But we
Keep
also brought Conan O'Brien. And every
going.
time we brought a speaker to campus, the organizing party um, had some one-on-one time, not one-on-one, but group time, just the organizing group with that speaker. And in that dinner, he mentioned to us, he said, Conan O'Brien said, always get in over your head. And
Mm.
that advice has stuck with me for 20 some odd years. It's really the only advice that stuck with me for 20 some odd years. But always get in over your head, because if you get in over your head, you force yourself to grow and you get out of your comfort zone. And if you don't do that, you're going to be stuck in the same job you're not that happy with, or doing the same thing you're not that thrilled with. And so you really have to force yourself to get in over your head to make some changes in your life. And I found that to be great advice. About, I don't know, 10 years ago with my last company, I was on the Inc. 500 list of companies. And
Mhm.
my buddy, who had a other company which was way more successful than me, he also made the list that year. And they asked both of us, Inc., I guess, sent out a survey saying, what's your words of advice? I had told him, always get in over your head. So he used that as his advice, and I was left with nothing because they wouldn't let me use the same advice. So,
You're like,
but
it
it
was
comes
mine
from
to
Conan.
begin with.
I know, it was Conan O'Brien. I have to give it to Conan O'Brien.
Wow, I bet you had quite a discussion with him after that. You're like, look, dude, I gave you that piece of advice, but
Yeah,
I needed that
yeah,
one.
we had a little joke going back and forth over it, and he's a great guy, so it quickly dissipated, but it was pretty funny.
It's always a way to make it up to you.
Yeah,
Well, so that's a great story that flashes back. And I love to ask people this question because I think it has to do with, what we learn over time and what we would do differently and what we would do, keep exactly the same way. So if you could go back and talk to the younger David at any point in time and tell him anything that would, shock his potential further, faster, or kept him on the exact same path,
yeah.
what point in time in his history would you go back to him? What would you tell that David?
So when I started my first company, I was thrown into it. I got fired. I had been in Chicago working for an investment bank. I moved out to San Diego, and in 5 months of living in San Diego, first of all, it rained all the time to the point where the mayor declared a state of emergency. San Diego is known for having the best weather in the country. When I was there, they were sandbagging. On top of that, in the 5 months, I got in a car accident, I got fired, and I got evicted from my apartment. It was crazy town.
That's a
It was,
bad year.
yeah, it was a bad time. The eviction and the firing were both because personalities on the other end. Had zero to do with me. Those stories are best told over a couple pints at Monk's. I don't
Exactly.
know if Monk's is still in
Yes,
Philadelphia, but
Monks is still there. Yeah,
oh, I
it's still
love
here.
I love Monk's. So anyway, got fired, evicted, car accident, my fault, and horrible rainstorms. I kind of crawled back to Phoenix, Arizona, where I grew up, with my head between my legs, because prior to that, I had used all 100% of my money to pay down school debt, and I had a
Mm.
lot of school debt. So it was great that I didn't have much school debt when I was thrown out on my rear end, but I didn't have any nest egg or what, rainy day fund to fall back on. So I think
Literally a rainy day fund from the
literally,
university.
yeah. So I was broke, dead broke. And I would tell prior David, always save a little bit,
Mm.
just so that doesn't happen. But I would also say, go with your gut, because what happened, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Getting fired and getting evicted. Getting evicted was just a good story, but getting fired was the best thing that ever happened, because it forced me to do something I always wanted to do, which was start a business. And that business compared to handwritten, did not take long to take off. It only took about 2 years before I was able to support myself. And throughout that 2 years, I was constantly doubting myself. Is this going to work? What am I going to do? If this fails, then what? And you really have to have confidence in yourself to know that, okay, if this does fail, or more than likely, it's not going to fail, but you're going to run out of money, or something will happen. Like, businesses don't just fail, you
Yeah.
quit the business.
Yeah.
And so, but what I'd say is, stick with it and just know that if it does fail, you're, you're an educated guy, you've had jobs in the past, you can pick up and give it another go. But that 2 years was life-changing for me. And just, I wish I didn't, almost give myself ulcers during it. I wish I would have had more confidence knowing, yes, what I'm doing is the right thing. Starting this text messaging company is the right thing. This time around, starting handwritten, it's taken 5 or 6 years to get to the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a little money in my pocket from the prior venture.
Mm-hmm.
And B, I have confidence in myself. So I think everybody just needs to know that if you want to make a big change in your life, whether that's starting a company or changing careers or quitting drinking or whatever that is, there's no
Mm-hmm.
time like the present, and you have to have confidence in yourself that you can survive the shock period when
Yeah.
things haven't, you know, we just planted a bunch of trees in our backyard, and those trees are all dying because they take a while to root. And you have to have the stamina to get through that rooting period. And I think that's the most important thing, is just being able to tell yourself, I am in a rooting period. This tree will root, and eventually it will grow again, and it will change my life and support me and support my family. And I'm not saying that starting a business is 100%, it's going to work every time, but you don't know unless you try. And the worst thing to
Yeah.
do is die with a lot of regret. So, which I'm sure you hear a lot, but yeah.
Well, and I think, I love that. I was just thinking, what a great blog post to talk about, a tree that is rooting, because there is that moment where it looks like it's dead. And from all perspectives, you want to just pull it and start over and,
Hmm.
rid yourself of the visual of the tree that looks like it's dying. And it does take that time where you say, okay, I know I'm doing the right things. I know it is rooting, and I'm going to make it through this period. And it's scary for a lot of people. And I think that that's why, you and I both know that most businesses, if they take off by year 3,
Hmm.
you've
Yeah.
had some really dang good luck. And by year 4, maybe you're starting to breathe a little bit, but you still probably haven't paid yourself.
Right.
And, so to have anything happen faster is amazing, but the rest of it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of guts. And when you are willing to put that in, there can be really big payoffs. And if you don't, you can leave some things unsaid and undone that, you never know what else could have happened from that.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Totally
I,
agree.
I love the concept of, also from Conan, being in over your head. And I was laughing as you were talking about it, because my business we're in year 4 right now, and we're taking, we were taking off like gangbusters this year. And then some things kind of, a
Really?
little
What were
thing kind of,
those?
yeah, just, I don't know, a mass pandemic where,
Yeah.
95% of my business income prior to March of this year,
Mm.
March of 2020, came from me getting on an airplane and traveling to speak and train around the world. So obviously that went to a nosedive. And so we pivoted, and we pivoted quickly. And it's, now I have opportunities that I would have never dreamed of, that are amazing. But what's really interesting is, about 3 weeks ago, a new opportunity kind of knocked at my door, and it involved starting a second business. And I had that moment where I thought, okay, I know this other business is also viable, but I'm just now going up again. Do I want to take that? And I sat back and I thought, if something presents itself to you and you have that opportunity, are you going to
Mhm.
let fear or feeling overwhelmed keep you from doing it? All right, you just have to get up an hour or two earlier every day. Maybe you have to work an hour or two later every day, and pull the pieces together. And we're going to launch that company here in about 3 weeks. And I feel sometimes like it's a little over my head, but not much, because I'm like, okay, you know this, you got this,
Mm,
go at it, tackle it one step at a time. And I'm excited to see where we are this time next year.
absolutely. Absolutely. This is, I'm a part of one of these leadership groups. You pay a bunch of money, and then every month you get together and you give a status update. And I'm
Mhm.
really amazed how many of those people, this has been a tough time for Handwritten too. I mean,
Mhm.
you'd think people would want to send handwritten notes during this period to tell everybody, hey, I care about you, or my
Mhm.
business cares about you, whatever, but it has slowed down substantially. I'm just amazed how many people have claimed to be untouched by this, because it is so over encompassing. I mean, I'm happy for them. I'm jealous and a bit bitter, but
You're like,
but
congratulations, I'm really happy for
yeah,
you.
yeah, exactly. But it is creating a lot of opportunity. Just like getting fired from my
Mhm.
last job was created opportunity for me. COVID's creating it for you. So it's awesome that you saw that and you leapt on it.
Yeah. It's a little terrifying, but it's kind of like getting on a roller coaster. Yes, you're
Yeah.
going to scream, but you feel pretty darn good when you get to the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, David, I know we're getting near the end. I know we'll have all of your contact information on our show notes, but for anyone who is too eager and they want to look you up right now, how do they find you? And especially make sure you discuss how handwritten is spelled, because that's
Yes.
a critical component to actually finding you.
So if you want to learn about handwritten, it's handwritten with a Y. Why? Because we love you. So it's HANDWRYTTEN. It's handwritten. If you go to handwritten with a Y .com, there's a whole resource section where you can learn all about the benefits of handwritten notes and why they work, and how they have a 300% open rate compared to print notes, and how they
Mm-hmm.
increase meeting bookings, and all of that. All the data is there, footnoted with references and all that for your perusal. If you want to learn more, or if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I believe I'm David B. Wachs, WACHS, on LinkedIn. Just look for David Handwritten, and I'm the only guy that matches those criteria. Also, David B as in boy Wachs on Twitter. If you want to sign up for Handwritten, use discount code podcast when you sign up with a email and password, and that'll get you $5 of credit to try the service out. You can use that to send yourself a note to see how the service works, or you can just go to handwritten.com, click the business link at the top, and request a free sample pack, which has samples of about 15 of our most popular styles, as well as all sorts of other information in there. And then we mail those out pretty quickly. So yeah, we're always happy to help. We are what do we do is service, not send handwritten notes. So always feel free to call us, ask as many questions as you want, and would love to help some of your listeners out.
I love that. Well, I'm going to sign up because I want to know. I want to see how
All
it
right.
goes. And as we clearly have identified, I have terrible handwriting.
We have
So
actually, ironically enough, our messy style is called Messy Michael.
yes, that's what I need. All right, I'm
So
in.
yeah,
That's how did you know? Have you been stalking me all these years,
I
David?
no, a wee bit, a wee bit. Actually, those styles, the first styles, are all named after my family. So
Oh,
Casual
how
David
lovely.
is me, and then there's Messy Michael, my brother, Proper Jeff, Slanty Steve, and even Compact Lulu, which is our 6-pound poodle. So if you want to write in a compact style, Compact
Oh,
Lulu's for you.
I love it. David, thank you. Before we wrap up, do you have any last words of advice or pearls of wisdom for my listeners and viewers?
No, just get in over your head, and the game isn't over until you quit. And sometimes you do have to quit, but just remind yourself the game's not over until you quit. So stick in it as long as you can. And if sometimes, like me, you get lucky, and it only takes 2 years. Other times you stick it out like me, and it takes 6 years to turn that corner. But if you put in enough hard work, I'm confident you'll see the rewards.
I agree. David, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to learn about you and your business, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Shock Your Potential. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and like our podcast. And for more information, find us at shockyourpotential.com and shockyourpotentialpodcast.com.